Greetings and welcome to Chiastics. We're covering the last section of human genetic history. It's the old gods, and it's a fun section for me. It can get a little bit crazy, but just to review, we've been over the Ice Age that happened after the flood and the Tower of Babel incident. And so the old gods really focuses on what happened to these cultures after they separated from each other. We kind of get to talk about pantheons. So, in Genesis chapter 10, we have a section called the Table of Nations, which is research gold if you want to know anything about migration patterns of people, the genetics, all of this sort of stuff. This is not just the Hebrew people. This is the whole planet. Everyone descended from Noah. So you can see at the beginning here we have Ham is the son of Noah, and one of Noah's grandchildren is called Egypt. So when you look on the map today, you'll find Egypt is named after a person. We also have lots of other interesting names, for example, Ra, Amma, and Sheba, which I wonder if are also related to nations and gods and things like that. So take a look at this guy's resume. Cush was the father of Nimrod, who became a mighty warrior on the earth. The first centers of his kingdom were Babylon, Uruk, Akkad, Calneh, and Shinar. From that land he went to Assyria, where he built Nineveh, Rehoboth-ir, Calah, and Rezin, which is between Nineveh and Calah, which is the great city. Okay, so this guy's resume includes the founding of 4 nations and the creation of multiple cities. How do we explain this? How does one person accomplish so much in their lifetime? Well, previously we've talked about the effects of lifespan. And what I want you to notice is I've made a similar chart for the lifespans after Noah and the lifespans before Noah. So before Noah, we saw that there were many different generations alive at one time, and people were alive for around 900 years. That doesn't immediately change after the flood. We have a really weird situation here. So the length across the x-axis is how long someone lives. So like Shem lived for 600 years, lived 500 years after he gave birth to Arphaxad. And any given vertical slice here is a particular point in time. So you see we have like 9 generations alive at one time. But we have something different here. This red area that I've highlighted is where the descendants die before the ancestor. So Eber outlives the next 5 generations of his own descendants. He outlives them. So think about this, for example, if you were a nascent peasant in Egypt, right? So you're just a regular dude living in Egypt, let's say around Terah's generational point in history. Now, if you had someone like Ra or Ra Amma from that previous section, who was in these early generations here, you could reach your old age and honestly say, son, look at that guy, Ra, who's on the throne right now. From the moment I was born until the time that I am now ready to die of old age, he has not changed. As far as I can tell, he is immortal. Because what this generational overlap does is it means the first couple of generations still retain that amazing vitality and lifespan that the antediluvians have, but they don't pass it on to their children. There's a drop-off in life expectancy of more than 1 year per year. So the younger you are, the sooner you'll die, and the older you are, the longer you'll live. It's very odd setup. So we have a situation where, in a very realistic sense, the forefathers, the founders, the oldest people could very well have been the founders and even gods of the people that they gave birth to, that they're their own descendants. So let's take a couple examples here. So uh, Pharaoh claimed to be God and was the ruler of Egypt. Uh, Zeus could have been an actual person that was the founder of the kind of pre-Greek civilizations. And in the case of Odin, we actually have him listed, Odin and Thor both, listed in the genealogies as real people. So what's interesting about this is that because you have all of these people that have these long lifespans, but they still have decreasing lifespans, they all end up dying at about the same time. There's this one 75 year period that I like to call Ragnarok because it's when all the gods die off. But it's interesting that God begins talking to Abraham and establishing the nation of Israel during this period of chaos. So think about in Egypt, for example, let's say we have Ra is actually a real living human being. And he's decked himself out in gold and has been talking for the last 500 years about how he's so awesome and godlike. He finally kicks the bucket. And so the priests may do something like setting up a gold statue of Ra and say, this is what Ra has become. He's now a gold statue, but we promise he's still alive, or he's still listening to your prayers. And so we have this transition from real people to idols, lifeless things that the Bible spends a lot of time mocking. So there's kind of a plausibility question here. So could someone really just worship a regular human being, not an idea? And I just Googled for idol, and I got this guy. Hopefully I don't need to tell you who he is. But it's strange, but this is what we end up doing, right? We end up sort of pinning our ideas and our worship to a regular person who really isn't anything special. And I would say that under these sort of circumstances, the early peoples were not morons, but they actually had much better reason to worship a regular human being than we did. And we still do this today. So, food for thought.